But it's all silver, one said. Why does the form matter that much? The advisor pulled up transaction records from February 2025. He showed them identical silver content, in different forms, selling for radically different net proceeds. The metal is the same, he explained, but the market treats it differently, and that difference costs you money when you sell. Meanwhile, institutional investors were developing even more sophisticated frameworks. A family office in Boston commissioned a complete audit of their physical precious metals holdings. They owned silver, gold, platinum, stored across 3 different facilities. The audit revealed something shocking. Their reported asset value, based on spot prices and weight, was $8.2 million. Their actual liquidation value, after all costs and realistic market conditions, was $6.7 million, a 20% gap between what they thought they owned and what they could actually access. The family office restructured everything. They consolidated storage, shifted to more liquid product forms, established pre-negotiated buyback agreements with dealers, and created clear liquidation protocols. 6 months later, they ran the audit again. The gap had narrowed to 8%, still not perfect, but dramatically better, and they learned something crucial. Liquidity in physical assets isn't automatic. It has to be engineered. A pension fund advisor in Illinois took this concept further. He developed what he called the 3-question framework for any physical silver position. Question 1. Can we verify this asset's authenticity quickly and cheaply? If the answer was no, don't buy it. Question 2. Do we have a predetermined exit strategy with a specific counterparty? If the answer was no, don't buy it. Question 3. Can we accept a potential 15% liquidation cost if we need emergency exit? If the answer was no, don't buy physical silver at all. Buy paper exposure instead. This framework eliminated most traditional silver products from consideration, but it also eliminated most liquidity surprises. For individual investors, the implications were equally significant. A retired engineer in Ohio had been stacking silver for 12 years. He owned 430 ounces, in various forms, stored at home. After watching the 2025 chaos, he decided to restructure. He sold everything, took the liquidity hit, and started over with a clear strategy. He divided his silver allocation into 3 buckets. Bucket 1, 60% of his silver capital, invested in highly liquid 1-ounce government-minted coins, stored in an allocated vault with a major dealer, with a pre-negotiated buyback agreement. Bucket 2, 30%, invested in 10-ounce bars from recognized mints, stored privately, intended as medium-term hold. Bucket 3, 10%, invested in whatever interested him, collectible coins, unique pieces, things he actually enjoyed owning, with zero expectation of liquidity. This structure cost him slightly more in fees, but it gave him something more valuable: certainty. He knew exactly what he could sell, how fast he could sell it, and what he'd realistically receive. No surprises, no assumptions, just clear-eyed reality about what physical silver actually was. As markets stabilized through mid-2025, these lessons spread. Silver didn't disappear from portfolios, but the way people owned it fundamentally changed. The casual approach, the assumption of easy liquidity, the belief that silver is silver, all of that died during the volatility. What replaced it was more sophisticated, more realistic, and more honest. Silver remained a viable asset, but only for those who understood its true nature, not as a commodity that trades like stocks, but as a physical good with physical constraints that required physical solutions. The people who learned this lesson adapted their strategies and structured their positions accordingly. They survived the chaos and even profited from it. The people who clung to old assumptions, who believed the spot price told the whole story, who thought liquidity was guaranteed, they learned painful lessons, and many of them never returned to the silver market. The market had spoken clearly. Physical silver ownership required serious planning, realistic expectations, and strategic discipline. Anything less was just gambling with metal, and the house always wins when you're gambling blind. In a conference room in Manhattan, 3 portfolio managers sat reviewing quarterly performance. One of them had recommended adding physical silver to their fund 18 months earlier. At the time, it seemed prudent. Inflation hedging, tangible assets, diversification away from purely financial instruments, the fund allocated 2% of assets, roughly $4 million, into physical silver. They bought recognized products, stored them in a professional vault, and waited. When silver prices surged in early 2025, the position looked brilliant. On paper, they were up 38%, but then the senior partner asked a simple question. If we wanted to exit this position tomorrow, what would we actually net? The manager who recommended the position started calculating. vault storage fees, authenticity verification costs, dealer buyback spreads, transportation and insurance. After running the numbers, the actual realizable value was 21% above their entry point, not 38%. The paper gain was an illusion. The real gain, after all friction costs, was nearly cut in half. The senior partner stared at the spreadsheet. So we're holding an asset that shows one value on our reports, but delivers a completely different value in reality? Silence. Then he asked the harder question. What else are we wrong about? That conversation, happening in different versions across hundreds of investment offices, represented a fundamental reckoning, not just about silver, but about physical assets in general. For decades, investors treated physical silver like a liquid commodity, something that could move in and out of portfolios with relative ease. The 2025 volatility shattered that assumption and forced a complete reassessment of what silver ownership actually meant. A wealth advisor in Colorado Springs started having different conversations with clients before 2025. When clients asked about silver, he discussed price potential, inflation protection, portfolio balance. After 2025, the conversation changed entirely. Now, the first question was different. Why do you want to own silver? And when would you need to sell it? Because the answer to that question determined everything else. If a client wanted silver as a true long-term hold, something they'd pass to children or grandchildren, then form and liquidity didn't matter as much. They could buy collectible coins, odd weight bars, whatever interested them. But if a client might need to liquidate within 5 years, or worse, within months during a crisis, then every decision about what to buy, where to store it, and how to structure the position became critical. The advisor started creating what he called a liquidity matrix. At the top sat the most liquid forms of silver, recognized 1-ounce rounds from major mints, stored in allocated professional vaults with established dealers. These could be sold within 48 hours, at spreads of 2 to 4% in normal markets. One level down sat common bullion products, stored privately or in bank-safe deposit boxes. These required more time to sell, verification steps, and faced wider spreads, typically 4 to 7%. Further down sat numismatic coins, odd weight bars, and specialty products. These might take weeks to sell, required expert authentication, and faced spreads that could exceed 15%. At the bottom sat scrap silver, jewelry, art objects, things with uncertain purity and form. And these were essentially illiquid unless sold at massive discounts to refiners. He showed clients this matrix before they bought anything. Choose your tier based on your exit timeline, he told them. Don't buy Tier 4 products if you might need Tier 1 liquidity. Some clients were surprised. A coin shop owner in Arizona described what happened next. We had people lining up outside before we opened. I've been doing this for 18 years and I've never seen anything like it. They weren't browsing. They weren't comparing prices. They were just buying whatever we had. One guy bought 12 random silver bars. Different sizes, different brands. He didn't care. He just wanted ounces. By noon, the shop was sold out. Every silver product, gone. The owner called his usual suppliers, trying to restock. 3 of them had nothing available. 2 of them had limited inventory, but with massive premiums. One supplier offered him silver rounds at $6 over spot. 6 months earlier, he was buying the same rounds at $2.25 over spot. He did the math. If he bought at 6 over, he'd have to sell at 9 or 10 over just to maintain normal margins. Would customers pay that? He didn't know, but he also didn't have a choice. If he wanted inventory, those were the terms. Meanwhile, online marketplaces turned into price discovery nightmares. On eBay, identical Silver Eagles were listed anywhere from $38 to $52 each. Same year, same condition, wildly different prices. Some sellers were dumping inventory quickly, desperate for cash. Others were holding firm, betting prices would keep climbing. Buyers didn't know what was real anymore. Was $45 a fair price, or a ripoff? Was $39 a bargain, or a scam? The traditional reference points had disappeared, and verification became another bottleneck. During stable markets, most buyers trusted most sellers. Authentication wasn't a constant concern for common products. But when prices spiked and new buyers flooded in, counterfeits followed. A dealer in Florida received a shipment from a new supplier, 50 1-ounce silver rounds. Supposedly. He tested the first 3 with a magnet. They passed. He checked the weight, within tolerance, but something felt wrong. He sent one to a professional testing lab. 3 days later, the results came back. 73% silver. The rest was base metal and filler. Sophisticated fakes, good enough to fool casual inspection. He immediately contacted the supplier, who claimed ignorance and disappeared. The dealer was out $1,500, and now he didn't know what else in his inventory might be fake. He started testing everything, which meant delays for customers, which meant lost sales, which meant revenue problems. The same pattern rippled through the market. Trust eroded, transaction costs increased, speed decreased, and liquidity, the thing everyone assumed silver had, evaporated. A private investor in Seattle discovered this personally. He owned 200 ounces of silver stored in a safe deposit box. When spot hit $35, he decided to sell half. He called 4 local dealers. None of them wanted to buy more than 20 ounces, citing inventory limits. He tried online platforms, listing required verification, photos, serial numbers for some products. The process took days. When he finally got offers, they were $7 to $9 below spot per ounce. After fees and shipping, his net proceeds were nearly $11 below spot on a $35 asset. He had assumed, like most people assume, that silver was liquid, that selling silver was as simple as buying silver. But the market taught him otherwise. Liquidity wasn't a characteristic of the metal, it was a function of market structure. And when that structure broke, liquidity disappeared. While individual investors struggled with these realities, institutional players were asking bigger questions. Questions about what physical silver ownership actually meant, and whether the entire asset class needed to be fundamentally reconsidered. On a Wednesday morning in late January 2025, a warehouse manager in Delaware noticed something unusual. His facility stored silver products for one of the country's largest online bullion dealers. Normally, shipments arrived, got logged into inventory, and shipped out to customers within 48 hours. A steady rhythm, predictable flow. But that Wednesday, something broke. 18 pallets of silver arrived from a mint. The system showed 473 pending customer orders, all prepaid, all waiting. Under normal circumstances, those pallets would be unpacked, verified, and shipped by Friday. Instead, the warehouse manager received a different instruction. Hold everything. Don't ship yet. He called his supervisor. Confused, the supervisor explained, "We've got orders coming in faster than we can source metal. If we ship what we have now, we'll have nothing for tomorrow's orders. And we've got customers who ordered 2 weeks ago still waiting." The warehouse manager looked at the pallets. "But these people already paid." "I know," the supervisor said. "But if we ship to them now, the next group waits even longer, and we don't know when the next shipment arrives." So the pallets sat. Paid orders, verified inventory, ready to ship, but going nowhere, because the distribution system had stopped making sense. This wasn't an isolated logistics problem. It was a symptom of something larger. The entire infrastructure that moved physical silver from producers to end users was collapsing under pressure it was never designed to handle. At mints, production lines that normally ran on scheduled cycles were now operating 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. But even at maximum capacity, they couldn't keep up. Orders that used to fill in 3 days were now quoted at 6 weeks. And that was just the timeline to manufacture the product. Shipping added another layer of chaos. A dealer in Texas ordered 500 ounces of silver rounds on January 8th. The mint confirmed the order, charged his credit card, and provided an estimated ship date of January 22nd. January 22nd arrived, no shipment. He called, new ship date, February 3rd, still nothing. New ship date, February 15th. Meanwhile, his own customers were calling him, asking where their orders were. He had sold product he didn't have, based on delivery promises that weren't being kept, and he wasn't the only one. Across the industry, dealers were caught in the same trap. Customer demand was immediate, supply was delayed, and nobody knew when things would normalize. Some dealers made a calculated decision. They stopped taking new orders entirely. A prominent online dealer posted a notice on their website. "Due to unprecedented demand and supply constraints, we are temporarily suspending all new silver orders. Existing orders will be fulfilled as inventory becomes available." Customers panicked. If the big dealers were closing their order books, what did that mean? They started looking for alternatives within 72 hours. Her grandfather's 30-year collection was liquid metal, dates that had taken him years to find, conditions he had carefully preserved, stories attached to individual coins, all of it gone. But here's what made this different from previous melt waves. In 1980, when silver hit $50 per ounce, mostly junk silver got melted. Worn coins, damaged pieces, things that had minimal numismatic value anyway. In 2011, when silver reached $48, the pattern repeated. Low-grade material went first. Collectible coins mostly survived. But 2025 was different, because this time, the premium structure had collapsed. A coin that might have commanded a $50 collector premium in 2020, now barely sold for $10 over melt, and when melt value climbed to within $5 or $6 of retail, collectors stopped buying, which meant dealers stopped being able to sell, which meant dealers stopped being able to justify holding inventory, which meant even decent collectible coins entered the refineries. A coin show promoter in Atlanta watched this happen in real time. In February 2024, his monthly show attracted 250 dealers and 2,000 attendees. Tables overflowed with Morgan dollars, peace dollars, commemorative half dollars. Collectors browsed, negotiated, built their sets. By February 2025, the same show looked completely different. Only 140 dealers showed up, and half of them weren't selling coins anymore. They were selling bullion, generic rounds, bars, modern mint products. The tables that used to display numismatic material sat nearly empty. One dealer explained it simply. Why would I tie up capital in a 1921 Morgan at $38 when I can't reliably sell it for more than $32? And melt value is sitting at $27? I'm losing money just holding it? So he stopped holding it, and the coins went to refineries. But the real shock came 3 months later, when silver prices corrected, dropping back to $29 per ounce. Suddenly, collectors returned to the market, looking for the coins that had always been available: common date Morgans, circulated peace dollars, the everyday material that built collections, except it wasn't there anymore. A collector in Minnesota searched for 3 weeks trying to find 20 circulated 1922 peace dollars, a date that used to be everywhere, in every shop, at every show. He finally found 14 of them, at prices 30% higher than he'd paid 2 years earlier for the same coins. The dealer selling them explained, there's just not as many around anymore. A lot of them got melted when silver was high. And that's when the realization hit the numismatic community. This wasn't a temporary supply shortage. This was permanent destruction. Coins that had survived for 100 years, through the Great Depression, through 2 world wars, through multiple economic crises, had been destroyed in a matter of weeks because of a price spike and a liquidity crisis. The collector market would eventually recover. Prices would stabilize. But the coins that went into the melting pot, they were never coming back. And the people who made those melt decisions, based on short-term pricing pressure and immediate liquidity needs, they had no idea they were erasing scarcity permanently. While this numismatic catastrophe unfolded quietly in coin shops and estate sales, the broader physical silver market was facing a completely different crisis, one that would challenge every assumption about how precious metals actually trade. There's a moment in every volatile market, and when something irreversible happens, something that can never be undone. In silver markets, that moment arrived on a Tuesday afternoon in January 2025. A third-generation coin dealer in Philadelphia stood in his shop, staring at a decision he never thought he'd have to make. On his counter sat 12 Morgan silver dollars, dated 1921, common year, circulated condition. 20 years ago, these coins sold for $25 to $30 each in his shop. Collectors bought them. Beginners started collections with them. They moved steadily, but on this particular Tuesday, everything had changed. Silver spot had just crossed $34 per ounce. Each Morgan dollar contained 0.77 ounces of actual silver, which meant the melt value alone was over $26 per coin. A customer walked in, looked at the coins, and asked the price. The dealer hesitated. He could sell them as collectibles, try to get $35 or $40 each, but the customer wasn't a collector. He was a silver stacker, and he was doing math in his head. "I'll give you $27 each," the customer said. "I'm just melting them anyway." The dealer watched the customer walk out, and then he made a phone call to a refinery. By Thursday, all 12 Morgan dollars were in a melting pot, transformed from historical artifacts into generic .999 fine silver bars, their numismatic identity erased forever, and he wasn't alone. Across the country, the same scene played out hundreds, then thousands of times. Estate sale buyers stopped caring about dates and mint marks. They weighed everything, calculated melt value, and sent it all to refineries. Coin shops that had maintained inventory for decades suddenly emptied their display cases, not because they sold the coins to collectors, but because they sold them to smelters. A woman in Oregon inherited her grandfather's coin collection: 63 peace dollars, 15 walking Liberty half dollars, a small pile of mercury dimes. Her grandfather had spent 30 years assembling it, carefully selecting dates, preserving family history. She took it to 3 different coin dealers. The first dealer offered her melt value, minus 10% for processing. The second dealer offered melt value, minus 15%. The third dealer didn't even look at the dates. He put the entire collection on a scale did quick multiplication, and made an offer she accepted 300 miles away. Another dealer was having the opposite conversation. A customer wanted to buy those same generic rounds. Spot was still $32, but the dealer was selling them for $36 each, plus shipping, same metal, same moment, but one person selling for $4 under spot, while another person buying for $4 over spot. An $8 spread on a $32 asset, and nobody seemed to know exactly why. This wasn't an isolated incident. It was happening everywhere, simultaneously. Refineries that normally processed silver within 5 business days were suddenly quoting 3-week turnaround times. Mints that usually maintained steady inventories went to allocation systems, limiting how much dealers could order. Online marketplaces showed the same silver product listed at radically different prices, sometimes separated by 15 or 20%. And the explanation everyone kept hearing was the same: high volume, supply constraints, unprecedented demand. But that explanation missed something critical. The market hadn't just gotten busy, it had fundamentally separated into tiers, and those tiers determined everything. At the top tier sat large institutional buyers. They bought in bulk, they had established credit lines with major dealers, and they could take delivery from primary sources. For them, liquidity remained strong. They paid small premiums, they received metal quickly, and when they wanted to sell, they found ready buyers. One level down sat serious retail stackers, people buying 10, 20, 50 ounces at a time. They faced higher premiums than institutions, usually 3 to 5% over spot, but they could still buy, and they could still sell with reasonable efficiency. Then came the third tier, small buyers, occasional purchasers, people treating silver as a casual hedge. For them, premiums jumped to 8, 10, sometimes 12% over spot. Delivery times stretched to weeks. And when they tried to sell back, dealers offered them 70 to 85% of spot, citing current market conditions. At the bottom tier sat people holding odd forms of silver, old jewelry, small art pieces, miscellaneous scrap. These holders faced the harshest reality. Refiners didn't want small lots. Dealers didn't want to test and verify unfamiliar items. And even when they found someone willing to buy, they often received offers 50 to 60% below spot price. The system had stratified, and the stratification was accelerating. A businessman in Denver discovered this the hard way. He had purchased 50 ounces of silver bars 2 years earlier as a hedge against inflation. When prices surged in early 2025, he decided to take profits. He called 3 local dealers. The first offered him $2 under spot per ounce. The second offered him $3.50 under spot. The third didn't want to buy at all, citing inventory limits. Frustrated, he turned to online marketplaces. He listed his bars at $1 under spot, thinking they'd sell immediately. 3 days passed, no buyers. He dropped the price to $2 under spot. Another week, still nothing. Finally, he accepted an offer at $4.20 under spot, nearly 13% below the market price everyone saw on their screens. And this pattern repeated thousands of times across hundreds of markets. The spot price kept climbing. Headlines kept celebrating silver's rally, but underneath that surface narrative, a different story was unfolding. Physical silver had become illiquid in ways that most holders didn't understand. Until they tried to sell, the market had split, and that split was about to trigger consequences that nobody saw coming. What people don't mention about silver that you must know. February 2025. 2 men walk into separate coin shops on the same afternoon, both holding identical 1-ounce silver eagles, both coins. Same year, same condition, same metal content. The first man walks out with cash in 15 minutes. The second man, still trying to sell his coin 3 weeks later. And when he finally does, he loses nearly 18% of what he expected. Same silver, same day. Completely different outcomes. The headlines told you silver was surging. What they didn't tell you was that the market had quietly split into 2 separate realities. And if you're holding physical silver right now, you might be standing on the wrong side of that divide without even knowing it. Welcome to Merrill and Macro. Now, before we go any further, let me ask you something the way I'd ask my father. You've lived long enough to know that the most valuable information rarely comes wrapped in pretty packaging. And channels like this, the ones telling you what the institutions won't, they only survive when people like you decide they're worth protecting. So here's what I need. Hit that subscribe button, not because I'm asking nicely, but because this kind of analysis, this level of market truth, disappears the moment people stop paying attention. And while you're at it, drop a comment below and tell me, Where are you watching this from right now? What city? What country? Because what's happening in silver markets isn't just happening in one place. And I want to know how far this warning needs to travel. Now, let's talk about what they're not telling you. For decades, anyone who wanted to understand the value of silver looked at one number, the spot price. It appeared on financial websites, scrolled across trading screens, and determined what silver was supposedly worth at any given moment. And for years, that system worked. A dealer in Texas could quote the same price as a dealer in New York, within pennies. A refiner in Switzerland processed metal at rates that matched refiners in Singapore. The market functioned smoothly, predictably, until it didn't. In late 2024, something changed. Silver prices began climbing rapidly, investment demand surged, industrial users scrambled for supply, and suddenly, everyone wanted physical metal. But here's what the charts didn't show. While the spot price climbed in neat, orderly lines, the actual market for physical silver was quietly fracturing into pieces. A coin dealer in Phoenix received a call from a customer. The customer owned 10 one-ounce silver rounds, generic bullion, nothing special. He checked the spot price, saw it trading at $32 per ounce, and called to sell. The dealer quoted him $28.50 per ounce. The customer was confused. "But spot is $32, he said. The dealer explained, "That's paper price. I'm buying physical. And right now, physical is different.